He looked like the last person in Hollywood you'd ever question. With that calm voice and easy smile, Fred MacMurray became the kind of man audiences trusted without thinking twice. But off camera, something didn't add up, and the people who worked closest to him knew it. There were stories no one talked about publicly: a violent clash with Humphrey Bogart, uncomfortable behavior that pushed co-stars away, and a reputation so difficult that even Alfred Hitchcock reportedly refused to deal with him. So how did someone with that kind of history manage to keep such a spotless image for so long? And what was really happening behind the scenes while America saw him as the perfect father figure? From small-town roots to Hollywood stardom, the rise of Fred MacMurray. Fred MacMurray was born on August 30th, 1908, in Kankakee, Illinois, almost by accident while his father, a traveling concert violinist, was performing in town. Although Illinois marked his birthplace, his real roots were in Wisconsin, where both of his parents were from. That Midwestern upbringing would later define the calm, trustworthy image audiences came to associate with him. After his parents separated when he was still very young, Fred moved back to Wisconsin with his mother, who worked hard to raise him despite limited means. They settled in Beaver Dam, a place he would always consider home and even reference years later in his films. Growing up, Fred stood out early. He was a strong student and a talented athlete, graduating from high school at just 16 while earning 10 varsity letters in sports. But beyond academics and athletics, music played a central role in his life. Influenced by his father, he learned the violin as a child, then later saved money from working at a canning factory to buy a saxophone. With it, he formed his first band and began performing locally. Despite his talent, he quietly struggled with stage fright, a challenge that followed him long into his career. He later attended Carroll College on a sports scholarship, balancing football studies and music to get by. Still, his ambitions pushed him further. In the late 1920s, Fred left Wisconsin and headed to Hollywood, not to become an actor, but to pursue a career in music. Arriving in Los Angeles at just 20 years old with his saxophone, he quickly realized success wouldn't come easily. He took on odd jobs, including selling sheet music near Grauman's Chinese Theater, a place where, years later, his name would be permanently etched into Hollywood history. His first real opportunity came when he joined the Gus Arnheim Orchestra, performing at the popular Coconut Grove nightclub in 1930. During this time, he recorded his only hit song, "All I Want Is Just One Girl." While his charm and voice gained attention, his music career never fully took off. Refusing to give up, Fred explored other paths, even taking night classes in cartooning, showing a persistence that would define his journey. Everything changed when a talent scout noticed him, not for his music, but for his natural presence. That moment led to a screen test with Paramount Pictures and opened the door to acting. Like many newcomers, Fred started small, appearing in uncredited roles such as Girls Gone Wild, 1929. These early roles weren't glamorous, but they gave him valuable experience and slowly built his confidence on screen. His first credited role came in 1935 with Grand Old Girl, marking a small but important step forward. Later that same year, his life changed overnight. Fred landed a leading role in The Gilded Lily alongside Claudette Colbert. Released on January 25, 1935, the film became a major success, earning over $1.5 million and turning him into a star. Interestingly, the role had originally been offered to Cary Grant, but a scheduling conflict gave Fred his chance. Audiences loved his chemistry with Colbert, and the two would go on to make several films together over the next decade. Just 1 week after the film's release, Paramount signed him to a 7-year contract. His salary started at $350 a week and steadily increased, and by the early 1940s, he had become one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors. Fred quickly rose to fame in romantic comedies, known for his easy charm, natural humor, and relatable presence. In 1935 alone, he appeared in 7 films, including the hit Hands Across the Table with Carole Lombard, which earned over $1.3 million at the box office. By 1936, Fred was earning $4,000 a week and receiving around 1,000 fan letters every week. To the public, he had become the perfect Hollywood star, likable, reliable, and effortlessly charming. Fred MacMurray steps beyond his image. On set, Carole Lombard quickly saw that Fred MacMurray needed help loosening up. Known for her bold humor, she once jokingly sat on his chest and told him, "You better be funny or I'll pluck your eyebrows." It was playful, but it worked. Fred took the push seriously, refined his timing, and slowly grew into the kind of comedic performer audiences would come to love. Their on-screen chemistry became a major success. After Hands Across the Table, they reunited for The Princess Comes Across, 1936, Swing High, Swing Low, 1937, and True Confession, 1937. Each film performed well, with Swing High, Swing Low becoming Paramount's biggest hit of 1937, earning about $1.9 million. Fred's ability to balance humor with emotion stood out, especially as he played roles that connected back to his musical roots. By the time True Confession was released on December 24, 1937, earning $1.4 million, he had fully matched Lombard's fast-paced comedic energy. Despite their strong partnership, their relationship remained strictly professional. In fact, Lombard introduced Fred to his first wife, Lillian Lamont, in 1936. They married that same year and stayed together until her death in 1953. At that point, Fred's life and career seemed steady, but a major turning point was coming. That shift began with Double Indemnity. When Billy Wilder first offered him the role of Walter Neff in 1943, Fred resisted. Known as Hollywood's nice guy, he feared playing a morally corrupt character would damage his image. He even admitted later that he threw the script aside, telling Wilder, "You're trying to kill my career." Without formal acting training, Fred doubted he could handle such a complex role, often asking for reassurance during filming. Wilder, however, was determined. After other stars like James Cagney, Gregory Peck, and George Raft turned it down, he spent weeks convincing Fred. He believed Fred's clean-cut image would make the character even more shocking. With encouragement from co-star Barbara Stanwyck, Fred finally agreed and signed on in April 1943. When Double Indemnity premiered on July 3, 1944, it changed everything. Critics were stunned by his performance, with the New York Times calling it a revelation. The film earned $5.7 million and received 7 Oscar nominations. Even James M. Cain praised his portrayal. Fred MacMurray redefines his career. The success of Double Indemnity changed everything for Fred MacMurray. Once known as Hollywood's dependable, nice guy, he suddenly found himself offered darker, more complex roles. Between 1944 and 1949, he embraced film noir, surprising audiences. Some were unsettled by the shift, while others praised his range. At the same time, his salary rose, and he gained greater control over his career. In 1949, he signed with Universal Pictures, determined not to be typecast. He began exploring different roles, from The Light Never a Dull Moment, 1950, to The More Serious Kind Lady, 1951, and Fair Wind to Java, 1953, gradually moving toward stronger dramatic performances. That shift peaked with The Caine Mutiny, 1954, where he starred alongside Humphrey Bogart. His portrayal of Lieutenant Tom Kiefer, quietly manipulative and complex, earned critical praise and helped the film become a major success. He pushed even further in The Apartment, 1960, directed by Billy Wilder, playing a cold, morally flawed boss. The performance shocked audiences and proved his versatility, as the film went on to win 5 Academy Awards. At the same time, MacMurray made a surprising move into family films. Starting with The Shaggy Dog, 1959, He became a regular star for Walt Disney Productions, appearing in hits like The Absent-Minded Professor, 1961, and Son of Flubber, 1963. These roles introduced him to a new generation and reshaped his public image once again. In 1960, he entered television with My Three Sons, a show that became an instant hit and ran for 12 seasons. To balance work and personal life, he created the MacMurray method, filming all his scenes in just 65 days a year. While effective for him, it created challenges for the cast and crew, from continuity issues to on-set tension. Despite it all, MacMurray remained the steady center of the show, appearing in all 380 episodes and cementing his place as one of television's most recognizable father figures, the ghost father and the tension behind the scenes. Working with Fred MacMurray on My Three Sons was far from typical. Because of his strict filming schedule, his co-stars often had to act as if he were present when he wasn't. Don Grady admitted it was mentally exhausting and made it hard to feel connected to his on-screen father. Stanley Livingston said the cast could go months without seeing him, making it difficult to build any real off-screen bond. Tim Considine echoed that feeling, while Grady famously called him a ghost father, someone who appeared briefly, worked intensely, then disappeared again. Even Barry Livingston recalled moments when he needed guidance, but knew MacMurray wouldn't be around, and yet his absence created a strange effect. When he did show up, the entire set shifted. As Stanley Livingston later said, it felt like an event. Everyone became sharper, more focused. That unusual dynamic only reinforced how much influence MacMurray had as a star, even when he wasn't physically there. Behind the scenes, however, tension was a recurring theme. During Double Indemnity, 1944, his relationship with Barbara Stanwyck was strained. The two argued over performances, and at one point, MacMurray walked off set, delaying filming for hours until Billy Wilder intervened. Another incident left Stanwyck refusing to work with him for days after an on-set accident. Despite this, their on-screen chemistry was widely praised, and the film became a major success, though crew members later hinted that the tension was very real. Conflicts continued throughout his career. He clashed with Billy Wilder again on The Apartment, 1960, resisting the darker tone of his character and even threatening to quit during filming. Co-stars like Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine witnessed the pressure firsthand, describing the set as volatile. He also had disputes with Claudette Colbert over billing and tension with Humphrey Bogart during the Caine Mutiny, 1954. As time went on, MacMurray became known for his rigid working style. His insistence on filming all his scenes at once, the so-called MacMurray method, forced others to adjust, often acting with stand-ins or imagining his presence. William Demarest once joked he had entire conversations with MacMurray when he wasn't even in the room. That approach eventually made directors hesitant, including Alfred Hitchcock, who reportedly passed on casting him because of scheduling concerns. By the end of My Three Sons in 1972, roles became harder to secure. Still, MacMurray remained aware of his reputation, later admitting, "I suppose I wasn't the easiest person to work with, but I always delivered on screen." Love, simplicity, and quiet wealth. The private life of Fred MacMurray. Away from the cameras, Fred MacMurray lived a life shaped more by family than fame. He married twice, and both relationships played a defining role in his life. His first marriage was to Lillian Lamont, and their story began with a surprise. On June 20th, 1936, the two eloped to Las Vegas, catching both the press and his studio completely off guard. Their marriage lasted 17 years, during which they adopted two children, Susan and Robert. But behind the scenes, Lillian struggled with serious health issues, including kidney and heart problems, and later reports suggested she also battled bulimia. Her death in 1953 marked a deeply difficult period in Fred's life. Just a year later, he found love again with June Haver. They met in 1953 at a party hosted by John Wayne, and their connection grew quickly. Fred proposed using a pinky ring borrowed from Red Skelton, believing it brought luck. Although they initially planned a later wedding, they quietly married on June 28, 1954. June had to give up her Catholic faith to marry him, and soon after, she stepped away from acting entirely. Together, they adopted twin daughters, Catherine and Lori, in 1956, after June was unable to have children due to a serious injury. Despite an 18-year age gap and doubts from others, their marriage lasted 37 years, until Fred's death in 1991. While he earned enormous sums in Hollywood, Fred was known for living modestly. In 1943 alone, he made $420,000, an amount equivalent to millions today. Yet he remained extremely careful with money. He often brought simple lunches to work, sometimes nothing more than a hard-boiled egg, and was known to avoid wasting anything. During one hunting trip, Clark Gable noticed Fred hadn't packed food. Fred simply replied, "I'll eat what you leave." Even at the height of his success, he avoided the lavish lifestyle typical of Hollywood stars. He and June lived without butlers or chefs, preferring a quiet, practical life. In his own words, he never considered himself as wealthy as stars like Bob Hope or Bing Crosby. Behind that modest lifestyle, however, was a sharp financial mind. Fred made smart investments, especially in real estate. In 1944, he purchased the Bryson Apartment Hotel in Los Angeles for $600,000 using earnings from double indemnity, holding it for decades. Even earlier, in 1941, he had bought a massive 1,750-acre ranch in Northern California's Russian River Valley, where he raised prize-winning Aberdeen Angus cattle and supplied beef to top restaurants. He also invested in apartment buildings, oil wells, and even a knitting mill. These ventures quietly made him one of the wealthiest actors in Los Angeles, though he often downplayed it, once estimating his total worth at just a few $1,000,000. After his passing, his legacy continued in unexpected ways. His family maintained the ranch, eventually leasing it to the Gallo Winery in 1996, which now produces wine under the MacMurray Ranch label. His daughter Kate still lives there, in a cabin Fred built himself. While his performances in Double Indemnity and The Apartment remain iconic, his quiet life, careful choices, and enduring family legacy tell a very different story, one far removed from the spotlight he once dominated.